You know, this is a story that is so incredibly difficult for a father to talk about. My son's in the Boy Scouts, my daughter's in the Girl Scouts. And this is a murder that occurred during a Girl Scout outing. Camping, it's one of the coolest things you can do with your kids, you know? It's really a bonding experience. It's a bonding experience with other kids. But in June of 1977, there were 3 girls who, on a regular camp out with the Girl Scouts, never returned home alive. Denise Milner, Lori Farmer, and Michelle Goose were murdered between the hours of 2 and 4 o'clock on June 13th, 1977. They were wrapped up in their sleeping bags, and the camp counselor pretty much freaked out when she saw it, called the police. The police combed the whole area. What ensued was a huge manhunt that lasted almost 10 months. This case was classified as solved when they found Gene Leroy Hart. He was a guy that lived about a mile away from Camp Scott, or at least he was raised there. He was actually an escapee from prison because he had raped 2 pregnant women years earlier, and he had been on the lam for like 7 years. They were pretty sure, based on several different pieces of evidence, that Gene Leroy Hart was the man that they were after. They found the guy, put him on trial, and he was acquitted. The medicine man that helped one of the sheriffs, this medicine man said that if Gene Leroy Hart was truly the man that had perpetrated these crimes, that God would have justice upon him. Gene Leroy Hart died of a heart attack after he was acquitted. This is the Camp Scott murders. On the morning of June 13th, 1977, along the trail that leads to the showers, about 150 yards from their tent, and these tents were a platform and then it was a canvas tent over top, there were 3 bodies, small bodies, discovered. This case was classified as solved when they found Gene Leroy Hart. He was a guy that lived about a mile away from Camp Scott, or at least he was raised there. He was actually an escapee from prison because he had raped 2 pregnant women years earlier, and he had been on the lam for like 7 years. They knew he was in the area, but they hadn't found him. They were pretty sure, based on several different pieces of evidence, that Gene Leroy Hart was the man that they were after. Where the case tends to get a little bit tricky is that there were dogs brought in from Pennsylvania, And these were called the Wonder Dogs. And these Wonder Dogs were tracking dogs, and they were supposed to be so amazing at tracking. They had been used on several cases and had done very well, and they were sure they would be able to find Gene Leroy Hart. Well, as the legend part of this would have it, that he went to a Cherokee medicine man and hired him to put a hex on these dogs. Actually, 2 of them did die. One of them died from heat exhaustion. One of them unexpectedly ran out in front of a car and got killed, which is very odd for a highly trained dog. Hart appeared one more time at Camp Scott. This time he left a present in one of the counselors' tents, and that was a bag. It was soaking wet, by the way, but it had the shoes and socks of one of the victims in it. So if we sort of take this case point by point, then we have to start at a couple of months before this actually happened. There was a counselor training camp. They returned from some sort of training to one of the tents. One of the tents had been ransacked. There was a box that had donuts in it, and all the donuts were gone. But inside of that box, there was a note saying that this person was going to kill 3 campers before the summer was out. And then there was a very crude drawing of a man hanging from a tree. Well, they passed it off as just a hoax and didn't really think anything more about it. But that would later come to fruition.
We were in the Choctaw unit, and then there's a trail that goes to the next ring of tents. And that, there were a bunch of them, but right across from where we were was the Kiowa unit, which is where the girls were killed. So the tent that they were in was the farthest away from, it was farther in the woods than any other tent. And I didn't hear anything that night. Other people said they heard screaming, but and some people said they heard guttural noises in the woods. I didn't hear any of that, but I did go to latrine with my tent mates, and there were some other girls that had just finished going to latrine. They were getting ready to leave, and they said that they had seen somebody walking down the trail toward our camp with a flashlight with red cellophane, or they didn't say red cellophane, they just said a flashlight shining red. And we didn't believe them. We thought, okay, it's really scary tonight. We've got this huge thunderstorm. We're all kind of freaked. And so we just thought they were being turds, and trying to scare us.
I want to thank Margie for coming forward. This is the first time she's done anything really since she was questioned by the FBI back after it happened. They questioned several of the girls that were there that night, and but she hasn't spoken about it since in any newspapers or videos or anything along that line. I'm maintaining the privacy of her last name. 3 young girls were mercilessly murdered, slaughtered, sexually abused, dragged down a trail. And just to kind of understand in any way, shape, or form how somebody would do that just completely escapes me. This is an open case. The person that was put on trial for the murder was acquitted. And maybe it's time that we figure out who it is. Now, that's a pretty lofty idea that just some guy in a rock band that decides to have a YouTube channel is going to solve a cold case murder. But you know what? maybe if we just get enough people to like be aware of it and know that it's not going away, that maybe there's something, someone, some piece of evidence out there that might come forward. Now, how many other girls are there that may have heard something and have been silent all these years? Maybe there's more to this than we know. If not, then it is important for people just to know the story and have compassion for the people that were involved. Take care of each other and keep rock alive. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and make sure to turn on your notifications so you get notified when I upload a new video.